Hello, and welcome to the Sleepy Professor. Tonight, we are stepping away from the rush of the modern world and settling into the deep, quiet dust of antiquity. We are wandering through the shadows and achievements of ancient civilizations, long before the glow of screens and the hum of electricity. There were cities built of sun-baked mud brick, towering ziggurats and temples carved directly into the living rock of the earth. These were the days when history was just beginning to be written, pressed into clay tablets with a reed stylus or painted onto papyrus beneath the shade of a palm tree. Civilizations did not appear overnight. They grew slowly, like a mighty tree setting its roots deep into the fertile soil along the banks of the world's great rivers. Rivers were the lifelines of the ancient world. They provided water to drink, silt for the crops, and a smooth flowing highway for travelers and trade. Let your shoulders drop. Allow your breathing to match the slow, steady current of these ancient waterways. Consider the Tigris and the Euphrates winding their way through the arid landscape of Mesopotamia. Between these two great rivers, the soil was rich and dark. Farmers learned to dig canals, coaxing the water away from the riverbanks and into their fields. With the water came grain, and with the grain came the first cities. Uruk, Babylon, names that echo through the centuries, heavy with the weight of time. In these cities, people looked up at the night sky, charting the movement of the stars and the phases of the moon. They found patterns in the darkness, seeking order in a vast and mysterious universe. Far to the west, another river flowed steadily northward through the desert, the Nile. To the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was more than a river. It was the heartbeat of their world. Every year, it would swell and flood its banks, leaving behind a thick, black, life-giving silt. When the waters receded, the land burst into green. The rhythm of the Nile was the rhythm of Egyptian life. It was a cycle of renewal, a promise that life would continue, year after year, century after century. Imagine the slow drift of a wooden boat moving along the Nile, the gentle lap of water against the hull, the soft rustle of reeds along the shore, the distant rhythmic sound of a farmer tending to a field under the warm golden sun. It is a peaceful scene, suspended in the long amber of history. Further east, along the banks of the Indus River, another quiet and remarkable society was building cities of extraordinary order. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were laid out with the precision of a modern grid. They had wells, wide streets, and homes made of baked bricks that fit perfectly together. It was a civilization that seemed to value tranquility and structure. The wind blowing through the ancient streets of Harappa carries no tales of grand conquests, but rather the quiet hum of a society living in balance with its surroundings. All of these people, separated by vast deserts and towering mountain ranges, were busy doing the exact same things. They were baking bread, weaving cloth, telling stories to their children, and watching the sun dip below the horizon at the end of a long day. They built grand monuments, yes, but their days were made up of the same quiet moments that make up our own. As we explore these distant worlds, there is nothing you need to memorize. There are no dates to keep straight. Just let the rise and fall of these ancient empires wash over you like a gentle tide. It is easy to picture these ancient worlds as isolated islands, separated by vast oceans of sand and impassable mountains. But the ancient world was not entirely still. It was woven together by a slow, deliberate web of footsteps. Long before paved roads or maps, there were paths worn into the earth by the steady rhythm of walking. Imagine a caravan setting out beneath a twilight sky. The air is cooling, the heat of the day rising off the desert floor. The animals move at a gentle, swaying pace. They are carrying lapis lazuli, a deep, celestial blue stone mined from the distant mountains of Central Asia. Slowly, patiently, this blue stone travels. It passes through the hands of merchants in the Indus Valley, moves across the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, and eventually finds its way into the quiet, sacred tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs. A single stone held by countless hands connecting empires. They traded more than just stones and spices. They traded ideas, as light and invisible as seeds carried on the wind. A traveler sitting by a fire in a Babylonian market might share a story of a great flood, a story that would be carried westward, repeated and reshaped until it became part of another culture's memory. The carvers of the Indus Valley created intricate stone seals, pressing them into clay. Centuries later, those very same seals would be unearthed in the ruins of Mesopotamian cities, silent proof that these distant neighbors knew of one another. Think of the night sky stretching over all of them. The astronomer in Uruk, standing on the high terrace of a ziggurat, is looking at the exact same moon as the farmer resting by the banks of the Nile. They are tracing the same constellations. They are asking the same quiet questions of the dark. Even though they spoke different languages and worshipped different pantheons, their daily rhythms were harmonized by the earth itself. The turning of the seasons, the flooding of the rivers, the simple universal need for shelter, for a warm fire, for a moment of rest when the day's labor is done. The boundaries we draw on maps today meant nothing to the wind that blew across the ancient Near East. It swept through the reed houses of Sumer, carried the scent of baking bread across the Egyptian delta, and rustled the leaves of the great peepal trees in Harappa. It was a shared world, a slow world, a world where a journey might take a lifetime, but where the destination was always another human face. As you lie there, let the vastness of that shared world bring you comfort. We are part of a very long, very quiet story. You do not need to carry the weight of it. Just let it support you, as solid and enduring as the ancient earth itself. Let the wind of that distant past carry your thoughts away. In the shadows of the great monuments, there were thousands of humble homes, nestled together like stones in a riverbed. These houses were built from the earth itself. In Mesopotamia, thick walls of sun-dried mud kept the interior cool while the desert sun blazed outside. There were no windows to the street, only a single doorway that led into a central courtyard. This was the heart of the home, a patch of open sky where a small fire might crackle, the smoke drifting lazily upward toward the stars. Inside, the floors were often covered in woven reed mats, cool and smooth beneath bare feet. There was a profound simplicity to these spaces, a few clay jars for water, a stone quern for grinding grain, a low wooden bed layered with linen. Everything had its place. Everything was made by hand, slowly and with purpose. Think of a family in a village along the Nile. As the blue twilight deepens, they gather inside. The scent of roasting emmer wheat and dried fish lingers in the air. A small oil lamp, carved from soft calcite or simple pottery, casts a flickering amber glow against the white plastered walls. This light does not pierce the darkness, it embraces it. It creates a small circle of warmth and safety in a world that felt vast and untamed. In the Indus Valley, the homes were surprisingly modern in their quiet efficiency. Many houses had their own wells and small bathing areas with carefully sloped floors that allowed water to flow away into hidden terracotta pipes. There is a sense of calm in that kind of order. It suggests a people who valued cleanliness and the quiet flow of daily life. Even thousands of years ago, the feeling of coming home, of closing a door against the world, was a universal comfort. These ancient families did not measure their success by how much they could accumulate, but by the steady rhythm of their survival. The father might spend his day checking the irrigation ditches. The mother might spend hours at the loom, the rhythmic thud-clack of the wooden shuttle creating a soundtrack for the afternoon. Children played in the dirt with small clay carts and pull toys, their laughter the same sound then as it is now. When the moon rose high over the ziggurat of Ur or the Great Pyramid, the people within these homes were already drifting into sleep. They were not burdened by the news of distant lands or the pressures of a ticking clock. Their time was measured by the length of a shadow, the rising of the Nile, or the ripening of the barley. The wait of the day is over for them, and it is over for you. The ancient walls are thick and strong. The courtyard is quiet. The fire has burned down to glowing embers. You are safe within the architecture of history. There is no need to build anything tonight. There is no need to plan. Just lean into the stillness that has rested over these homes for 5,000 years. In the deep stillness of the ancient night, the darkness was absolute, save for the brilliant silver dust of the Milky Way. There were no city lights to dim the view, no hum of machinery to break the concentration. Imagine standing atop a high-tiered tower in the city of Babylon. The air is thin and cool at this height. Below, the city is a charcoal sketch of shadows, but above, the sky is a vibrant, living map. The scholars of Mesopotamia were the first to truly read this map. They did not see the stars as random points of light, but as a grand celestial clock. With patient, steady hands, they recorded every movement on tablets of clay. They watched the wandering planets and the rhythmic return of the moon. They noticed that the universe had a pulse, a predictable, repeating cycle that matched the seasons on Earth. This was the birth of a quiet science. It was a search for harmony. They believed that if they could understand the movements above, they could find peace and order below. Across the desert, the Egyptian priests were doing the same, but with a different focus. They watched for the star Sirius, the dog star, to rise just before the sun. They knew that when this silver spark appeared on the horizon, the Nile would soon begin its life-giving flood. To them, the stars were a calendar, a divine signal that the earth was about to wake up. They aligned their great stone monuments to the cardinal points, anchoring their civilization to the very geometry of the universe. In the Indus Valley, though we have fewer written records, we see the same obsession with alignment. Their cities were oriented to the north, south, east, and west with a precision that suggests a deep, intuitive understanding of the spinning world. Think of these early scientists not as people in a rush to discover, but as observers in a state of deep, meditative listening. They were not trying to conquer nature, they were trying to learn its language. They saw the world as a single giant mechanism, where the smallest grain of sand was connected to the most distant star. This ancient wisdom was a slow wisdom. It was passed down through generations, whispered from teacher to student under the same vast canopy of stars. It was a knowledge that required patience, the kind of patience that comes from watching a shadow move across a sundial for an entire afternoon, or waiting a whole year for a single star to return to its place. As you rest tonight, imagine that same ancient sky stretching over you. The stars are in the same positions they were when the first pyramids were built. The moon still pulls the tides and lights the path for the night traveler. There is a great, slow constancy in the universe that has outlasted every empire and every city. You are part of that constancy. You are resting under the same protective blanket of history that sheltered the scholars, the priests, and the dreamers of the ancient world. Let your mind become as vast and as quiet as the Babylonian night. The stars are watching, and there is nothing left for you to solve. Beyond the crowded streets and the stone monuments, there was a quieter side to ancient life. It was found in the walled gardens, the hidden sanctuaries where the desert heat was held at bay. Imagine a high, sun-bleached wall made of thick clay. Step through the heavy wooden gate, and suddenly the air changes. It is several degrees cooler. It smells of damp earth, crushed mint, and the sweet, heavy scent of jasmine. In the ancient Near East, a garden was more than a luxury. It was a deliberate act of creation. The Persians called these spaces paradisa, a word that eventually gave us paradise. They were enclosed worlds, protected from the harsh winds
and the drifting sands. Think of the hanging gardens of Babylon, legendary and lush. Even if they exist now only in our dreams, the idea remains powerful. Imagine terraces of green rising like a mountain in the middle of a dry plain. Water was lifted from the river by great wooden wheels, flowing through narrow stone channels that crisscrossed the garden like silver veins. Listen to the sound of that water. It is not a roar, but a gentle, musical trickle. It moves over smooth pebbles, spilling from one level to the next. In the quiet of the afternoon, this sound is a lullaby. It reminds the soul that life can flourish even in the most arid places, provided there is a steady, nurturing flow.
In Egypt, the gardens of the wealthy were laid out around rectangular pools filled with clear water from the Nile. Large, flat lotus flowers floated on the surface, their blue and white petals opening to the sun and closing as the shadows lengthened. Sycamore figs and date palms provided a canopy of deep, flickering shade. Here a scribe might sit with his wooden palette, watching the dragonflies skim the water. There was no rush. The garden invited a state of seeing rather than doing. Even in the Indus Valley, the presence of water was a constant, calming companion. Their sophisticated drainage and plumbing were not just for utility. They reflected a culture that understood the flow. The great bath of Mohenjo-Daro, with its carefully laid bricks and bitumen lining, was a place of quiet transition, a space where the heat of the body and the noise of the mind could be washed away. The ancient world knew that the mind needs a place to rest. They built these gardens as a physical representation of that rest. They planted trees that would take decades to mature, knowing they were planting for a future they might not see. That is a slow, beautiful kind of faith. As you lie there, imagine yourself in one of these ancient courtyards. The sun is setting behind the high walls. The birds are settling into the palm fronds. The only sound is the rhythmic pulse of water moving through a stone pipe. It is a closed world. Nothing from the outside can reach you here. The sand is outside. The wind is outside. But here in the garden of history, everything is green, cool, and still. Your thoughts are like the lotus flowers, simply floating, rooted in the deep, quiet water. Imagine a building made of massive, cream-colored limestone, its columns rising like silent giants toward a vaulted ceiling. This is the great library, a place where the air is thick with the scent of dried papyrus, cedarwood oil, and the faint, sweet dust of history. Outside, the Mediterranean Sea might be crashing against the harbor of Alexandria, but inside these walls, the sound is muffled to a soft, rhythmic pulse. There are no heavy printed books here. Instead, there are thousands of scrolls, each one hand-rolled and tucked into a honeycomb of wooden pigeonholes. Each scroll is a voice from the past, waiting in the dim light. Think of a librarian moving slowly through these aisles at the end of the day.
Their footsteps are silent on the polished stone floor. They carry a small oil lamp, its flame a tiny, steady gold bead in the vastness of the hall. As they move, the light catches the edge of a scroll, a treatise on geometry, a collection of lyric poetry, or a map of the known world drawn by a traveler who walked until the earth met the sea. As you settle further into your own rest, imagine your mind as a library at the end of the day. The thoughts you've gathered, the worries you've carried, they are all being gently rolled up and put away in their proper places. You don't need to read them tonight. You don't need to study the maps of tomorrow. The halls are quiet. The lamps are being dimmed one by one. The heavy bronze doors are being pulled shut, leaving the wisdom of the ages to sleep in the dark. You are safe in the silence of the great library. Your story is part of the collection, and for now, the ink is dry and the page is still. Imagine a long, low building of sun-baked brick standing alone on a high plateau. This is a caravanserai, a roadside inn along the Silk Road, a sanctuary for those who spend their lives moving across the face of the earth. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving a bruised purple sky that stretches from the Mediterranean all the way to the mountains of the east. Outside the thick stone walls, the wind hisses softly through the scrub brush and the shifting dunes. But inside the central courtyard, the world is contained and calm.
Think of the sounds of a caravan settling in for the night. The heavy wooden gates are barred against the desert vastness. There is the low, rhythmic grumble of camels as they fold their long legs and sink into the cool sand. There is the soft clink of copper pots and the muffled thud of heavy saddlebags being lowered from tired backs. These bags are full of wonders, silk as smooth as water, peppercorns from distant jungles, and frankincense that smells of ancient sunlight. But for the traveler, the greatest luxury is not the cargo, it is the stillness. A small fire flickers in the center of the yard, its smoke rising straight and true into the thin, cold air. Around the fire, men from different worlds sit in a shared, weary silence. A merchant from Palmyra, a horseman from the steppes, and a monk from the high valleys. They do not need to speak the same language to understand the language of the road. It is a language of endurance, of patience, and of the deep physical relief that comes when the day's journey is finally over. In the caravanserai, time does not move in minutes. It moves in heartbeats and the slow rotation of the Great Bear constellation above. There are no maps to study tonight. The road will still be there tomorrow, winding its way through canyons and over mountain passes. But for now, the road has ended at this door. The merchant spreads a thick wool rug over a raised stone platform. The wool is heavy and smells of wood smoke. As he lies down, he looks up at the square of stars framed by the courtyard walls.
He feels the immense weight of the miles he has traveled, but it is a good weight. It is the weight of progress, of a life lived in motion. Now that motion is being replaced by the steady, grounding pull of the earth. The fire burns down to a soft, glowing pulse of orange. The camels have fallen silent. The only sound is the occasional pop of a cooling ember and the vast, hollow sigh of the desert wind far above the walls. You are that traveler tonight. You have carried your own cargo through the day, your worries, your tasks, your many thoughts. But you have reached the gates of the caravanserai. You have unburdened your pack. You have led your thoughts to water and let them rest. The walls are 3 feet thick. The gate is locked. The stars are in their places. You are part of a 1,000-year tradition of travelers who found their peace in the middle of a long journey. Let the swaying rhythm of the camel's gait linger in your mind until it becomes a slow, hypnotic rocking. You are not going anywhere else tonight. You have arrived.
Imagine a small circular workshop made of thick, cool mud brick. The air inside is still and carries the scent of damp earth and river water. It is that quiet hour before the city fully wakes, the time when the world feels private and new. A lone potter sits on a low wooden stool, his hands resting on a heavy stone wheel. Beside him is a mound of clay pulled from the banks of the Euphrates. It is gray and smooth, heavy with the minerals of the mountains far to the north. This clay has traveled hundreds of miles in the river's current, settling slowly into the silt beds, waiting to be shaped. Think of the potter's hands. They are steady and patient. He kicks the heavy stone wheel, and it begins to spin with a low, hypnotic hum, a rhythmic whir, whir, whir that anchors the room. He places a lump of clay in the center. With a splash of cool water, he begins to press. As the wheel spins, the clay rises. It is a slow, magical transformation. Under his palms, the shapeless earth becomes a cylinder, then a curve, then a bowl. It is a dialogue between the spinning stone, the wet clay, and the human touch. There is no rush in his movements. If the clay resists, he slows down. If it wobbles, he breathes and centers it again. This is the oldest rhythm in the world, the act of making something useful from the ground beneath our feet. In every ancient civilization, the potter was the silent heartbeat of the economy. They made the jars that held the grain, the lamps that held the oil, and the cups that held the wine. Their fingerprints are still there, pressed into the fired clay thousands of years later, a physical touch that has outlasted the rise and fall of kings. To work with clay is to work with time itself. The potter pulls a thin wire through the base of the bowl, lifting it away from the wheel. He places it on a wooden shelf to dry in the soft morning air. It will sit there for days, losing its moisture slowly, turning from dark gray to a pale, bone-colored tan. It is a process that cannot be hurried.
The sun and the air must do their work at their own pace. Think of your own day as a piece of clay that has been spinning on the wheel. It has been shaped by many hands, pulled in different directions, and felt the heat of the sun. But now the wheel has stopped. The shaping is done. You are like that bowl resting on the shelf in the cool of the workshop. You are transitioning from the fluid, moving energy of the day into a state of solid, peaceful stillness. The moisture of your worries is evaporating into the night air. You are becoming centered, grounded, and quiet. The potter wipes his hands on his linen apron and steps out into the morning light. The river is a sheet of glass. The birds are just beginning their first soft calls. The world is beginning a new cycle. But for you, the work is complete. You are finished with the shaping. You are ready to rest in the strength of what has been made. Imagine a landscape that looks like a vast, shimmering sea of gold. This is the North China Plain, 3,000 years ago. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of dry earth and the toasted sweetness of ripening millet. The great river, the Huanghe, flows nearby, a wide, powerful presence that brings both life and the heavy yellow loess soil that gives the land its color. In the fields, the harvest has begun, but it is a harvest of quiet, collective movement. There is no clatter of machines, only the rhythmic swish, swish of bronze sickles cutting through the stalks. The farmers move in a slow line, their backs bent to the earth in a posture of deep respect. Think of the sound of the wind moving through the unharvested grain. It is a long, hollow sigh that travels for miles across the flat horizon. It sounds like the earth breathing out after a long summer of growing. Every bundle of millet is gathered with hand, tied with a twist of straw, and stacked into neat conical stooks that cast long, soft shadows in the afternoon light. There is a profound sense of timing here. The farmers know that the seasons are a mandate, a celestial agreement that they must honor. They work with the sun, waking when it touches the roof of their thatched homes, and slowing as it begins its long amber descent. In the nearby village, the older men and women sit on low wooden benches in the communal square. Their hands are busy too, but with a different kind of rhythm. They are winnowing the grain, tossing it into the air from flat wicker baskets. Listen to the sound of the grain falling back into the wood, a soft, dry patter like the first few drops of a summer rain. The wind catches the light chaff and carries it away, leaving only the heavy, nourishing seeds behind. This is a process of refinement, of keeping only what is essential and letting the rest drift into the breeze. The Yellow River civilization understood that life was built on these small, repetitive acts. Their philosophy was not one of struggle, but of wu wei, the art of effortless action, of flowing with the current rather than fighting against it. Like the river itself, they knew that true power comes from persistence, from the slow, steady accumulation of effort over time.
As the sun touches the distant mountains, the harvest stops. The sickles are wiped clean and tucked away. The farmers walk back toward the village, their shadows stretching out before them like long, dark paths. They are tired, but it is a quiet, satisfied exhaustion. The granaries are filling. The winter will be warm. The cycle has been completed once again. Think of your own efforts today as the grain you have harvested. Some of it was heavy work. Some of it was light chaff. But now the winnowing is over. You are letting the wind of the evening carry away the unnecessary details, the small stresses, and the fleeting worries. You are keeping only the essence, the quiet strength of a day well lived. The village fires are being lit, sending thin ribbons of blue smoke into the darkening sky. The millet is simmering in the pots. The world is turning inward, away from the fields and toward the hearth. You are part of that turning. You are coming home to yourself. Imagine a narrow, winding path carved into the side of a granite peak. The air here is cold and sharp, smelling of pine needles and damp moss. We are entering the world of the mountain retreat, the high sanctuaries of ancient China and Tibet, where those who sought the ultimate peace withdrew from the noise of the empire. Far below, the cities are bustling with trade and politics, but up here, time behaves differently. It stretches and thins like the clouds drifting through the mountain passes. Think of a small hut perched on a rocky ledge. Its roof is made of heavy gray slate, and its walls are thick timber. Inside, a single person sits on a woven grass mat. There is no furniture, no scrolls, no tools of trade. There is only a small iron pot resting over a bed of white ash. The only sound is the rhythmic, hollow sigh of the wind as it combs through the ancient, twisted pine trees outside. In these high places, the ancient seekers practiced the art of sitting in forgetfulness. They weren't trying to achieve anything. They were trying to let everything go. They watched the mist rise from the valley in the morning and sink back down at night. They watched the seasons change the color of the moss from a bright spring emerald to a deep winter velvet. Listen to the sound of a distant temple bell carried on the wind from a neighboring peak. It is a long, low bronze note that vibrates in the chest. It rings once, and then the silence that follows is even deeper than the silence that came before. That note is a reminder that everything, the mountains, the empires, the stars, is part of one single vibrating breath. The mountain dwellers lived by the way of the water. They saw how a stream doesn't argue with a boulder, it simply flows around it. They saw how the snow doesn't struggle to fall, it simply lets go when the air is heavy enough. They learned that the greatest strength is often found in the greatest softness. As you lie in the stillness of your own room, imagine you are in that high mountain hut. The walls are strong,
and the world is very, very far away. The clouds are moving past your window, soft and gray, wrapping the mountain in a protective blanket of fog. You are invisible to the world below. No one can reach you here. No one needs anything from you. The fire in the hut has dimmed to a single pulsing coal. The wind in the pines has become a steady, hypnotic white noise, a cosmic shush that tells the earth it is time to sleep. You are letting go of the climbing of your day. You have reached the summit. There are no more paths to follow, no more ledges to navigate. You are simply resting in the vast, open space of the peaks. Your breathing is slow and shallow, matching the rhythm of the mountain itself. You are as enduring as the stone, as light as the mist, and as quiet as the falling snow. Imagine a hillside covered in gnarled ancient olive trees. Their trunks are twisted into silver sculptures, weathered by centuries of sun and salt air. This is the heart of the Mediterranean world, a landscape of limestone and blue water, where the pace of life is dictated by the slow golden arc of the sun. The heat of the afternoon is beginning to lift. For hours, the only sound has been the rhythmic, electric buzz of the cicadas in the high branches, a sound so constant it becomes a part of the silence itself. But now, as the shadows stretch across the dry, rocky soil, the cicadas are fading. They are giving way to the soft, cooling sigh of the evening breeze blowing in from the Aegean Sea. Think of a small, whitewashed stone house nestled among the trees. Its walls are thick, designed to soak up the heat of the day and release it slowly into the night. On the terrace, a wooden table holds a simple bowl of dark, salt-cured olives and a jar of cool water. There is a profound rustic dignity to this scene. It is a world that understands the value of skole, the Greek word for leisure, but not a lazy leisure. It was a purposeful stillness, a time to let the mind wander and the soul breathe. On this hillside, the ancient philosophers once walked. They didn't seek answers in books alone. They sought them in the way the light hit the water, or the way a vine curled around a trellis. They believed that the universe was a cosmos, an ordered, beautiful whole, and to understand that order, one had to be still enough to hear it. Listen to the rhythmic thump-thump of a distant goat bell as a herd moves slowly down the mountain toward the fold. It is a slow, irregular music that tells you the day is folding into itself. The shepherds are returning. The fishermen are pulling their wooden boats onto the pebbled beaches below, the water lapping gently against the hulls with a soft, liquid hush. In the ancient Greek mind, sleep was the brother of death, but also the father of dreams. It was a sacred transition. They built temples to healing, where the primary medicine was a long, deep sleep in a quiet hall, surrounded by the scent of laurel and honey. They knew that the body and the mind need to unstring the bow at the end of the day. As you lie there, imagine you are resting under one of those silver-leaved trees. The ground beneath you is warm and solid. The air smells of wild thyme and dried pine needles. The blue of the sea is deepening into a dark, royal purple, and the first stars are blinking awake over the ruins of a distant temple. You are unstringing your own bow tonight. The tension of the day is slipping away, like water soaking into the thirsty soil. You are part of this ancient Mediterranean calm, a world that has seen thousands of years of sunsets and knows that the morning will always return, but that the night is for the quiet work of the spirit. The cicadas have gone silent. The breeze has dropped. There is only the vast rhythmic breathing of the sea and the steady ancient peace of the hillside. Imagine the planet as it was thousands of years ago, viewed from the silent silver heights of the moon. There are no borders, no modern lights, only the natural contours of the earth, the dark ribbons of the rivers, the jagged white spines of the mountains, and the vast charcoal expanses of the deserts. Across this map, in every valley and on every shore, the fires are going out. The scribe in Egypt has set down his reed pen. The weaver in the Indus Valley has stepped away from the loom. The shepherd on the Greek hillside has closed the gate to the fold. In this moment, they are no longer divided by their languages, their empires, or their gods. They are united by the most ancient and universal human experience, the transition into sleep.
Listen to the collective breathing of a world at rest. It is a slow, rhythmic tide that has been washing over the earth since the beginning of time. Think of how many millions of people over thousands of years have lain down at the end of a long day, just as you are doing now. They felt the same softening of the shoulders. They felt the same slow drift of thoughts as the logic of the day began to dissolve into the imagery of dreams. They trusted the night to hold them, just as you are trusting it now. Civilizations rise and fall like the seasons. Temples crumble and become part of the sand. But this quiet, nightly ritual of rest remains unchanged. It is the thread that connects us to the very first builders and the very first dreamers. When you sleep, you are stepping into a sanctuary that has been kept warm and quiet for you by every generation that came before. The ancient world is not gone. It is folded into the earth. It is whispered in the wind. It is etched into the stars that continue to watch over your room. You don't need to carry history anymore. You don't need to understand the rise and fall of kings or the movement of the trade routes. The great library is dark. The Silk Road is silent. The Nile is a mirror reflecting the moon. Allow yourself to sink into the deep, supportive layers of time. You are floating on a sea of 5,000 years of peace. There is no more distance to cover.
There are no more segments to follow. The lecture is over, the lamp is out, and the silence is absolute. Let the ancient world breathe for you. Let the steady, patient heartbeat of the planet become your own. Good night, student of the ages. Sleep well.